If you're all set, we can go ahead. We can begin with our session today. Perfect. So we are all set to begin with another exciting session on connecting the dots. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. A diverse mix of voices leads to better discussion, decision, and outcomes for everyone. This was a great quote shared by Sundar Pichai. Diversity, equity, and inclusion, DEI, is vital to creating and maintaining a successful workplace, one founded on the principle that all people can thrive personally and professionally. Before you begin to re-evaluate your efforts and implement new practices, it's important that you fully understand each component, both individually and how they work together. Here you'll understand what diversity, equity, and inclusion are, and using HR experience, it provides a foundational introduction to DEI today. Join us for this very exciting session and watch our experts share their valuable inputs on how industry across can adapt to DEI and make it part of their strategic growth plan. HRAI welcomes you all to the session on connecting the dots, where are we with DEI, diverse, equitable, and inclusion. To know more about HRAI and its events, I would request all our participants to visit the link posted in the chat window. It would be great to have all the participants' feedback. We'll be running a poll before the Q&A session. Request all the participants to kindly give your feedback to the session. I now take the privilege to introduce our esteemed panel members for our today's webinar. Mr. Sudipto Mandal, VP and CHRO, HR and Admin, Star Cement Limited.
Hello.
Mr. Sudipto Mandal is currently working as the VP and CHRO at Star Cement Limited. He has over 23 years of industry experience across different sectors, ranging from manufacturing, ITES, FMCG, BFSI, and retail. In MNCs and leading leading Indian conglomerates. He is an alumnus of TISS Mumbai and has worked with different organizations such as Asian Paints, Zest, Oracle, Spencer, Crisil, Everready. Mr. Mandal is also a certified coach and certified trainer on customer service management. He is a business leader, whereas he intensively worked in areas like business strategy, HR strategy and cultural transformation, leadership development, change management, capability building, talent and performance management, organization design and restructuring. As a techno-functional Oracle HRMS consultant, he has also worked in line functions in Oracle Global Support Team, supporting UK and EMEA regions. He has recently been appointed as the Honorary President of the Kolkata chapter of the NHRDN, the largest body and forum for HR in India. You can also follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Our next panel member, Mr. Anthony J. Alex, founder and CEO, Rainmaker. Mr. Anthony is a serial entrepreneur and an alumnus of NISAU Bangalore. Anthony started his career with ICICI Bank in 1998. The entrepreneurial bug bit him soon after, and he moved in 2001 to set up Kocher and Company Mumbai office after 5 years of rapid growth and establishing Kocher and Company as a premier firm in Mumbai's competitive law firm landscape. In 2006, he set his sights higher and took up the challenge of being part of core founding team at Pangea 3, the world's largest and most successful LPO. Anthony was instrumental in growing and scaling Pangea 3 from 10 plus lawyers and engineers to over 1,000 professionals, delivering high quality services to Fortune 500 companies and top tier law firms around the world. Throughout his career, Anthony was always been passionate about training and has conducted numerous workshops on topics ranging from prevention of sexual harassment, anti-corruption practices, corporate governance, code of conduct, etc. It is his passion for learning and training that led him to set up Rainmaker. When Anthony is not thinking about turning the world of learning on its head, he likes to read and spend time with his wife, Ria, his daughter, Neonica, and his lazy lab, Jordi. Adventure sports and deep sea diving is his passion. Rishikesh, white water rafting, Campstead paragliding, and Dahab deep sea diving are his favorite spots. You can also follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Our next panel member, Ms. Vandana Teji, founder and chief consultant at the Unicorn People. Ms. Vandana is a human resource professional with over 13 years of industry experience. She holds a degree in strategic human resource management from the National University of Singapore. She is the founder of the Unicorn People, a new age HR consulting firm, and co-founder of Entraco, an employee engagement app. She has been impaneled by the Government of India as a resource person to spread awareness for the prevention of sexual harassment, POSH, of women at workplace. She acts as an external member for the internal committee of various organizations where she guides policy making, grievance handling, and resolution to enable a safe workplace. She's also an active member of Green Heart Dignity, Italy, and is working towards achievement of UN Sustainable Development Goals. You can also follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Now I'll introduce our panel cum moderator for today's session, Mr. Dhawan Bhau, professional speaker, DB Speak. Dhawan Bhau is an individual professional speaker with rich experience and more than 16 years of experience in HR generalistic role, along with HR lifecycle and over 9 years of experience in business development. He has been associated with multinational companies as an HR generalist for 5 years, and currently he is a vice president marketing at an automobile company. You can also follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Without taking much time, I now hand over the platform to Mr. Dhawan. Over to you, Dhawan.
Thanks, Peterson. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction for the panel members and everyone. And a very good afternoon and warm welcome to all the audience. So, without wasting much more time and starting with today's webinar. So today it's a period where we are growing, the time is growing, and we are on a growing stage. I would like to go ahead with the first thing which is diversification. So being diversified at every point is much more important. So diversified work environment is a privilege enhanced growth. So I would like Anthony to enhance with us for the same. And over to you, Anthony.
Anthony, you will have to unmute yourself. Are you able to unmute yourself?
Just a second. Yes, now I can.
Now you can.
Thank you. I think there was some challenge there with the unmuting button. Yeah. So, when it comes to sort of diversity and the business case for diversity, I think I'd like to sort of just start by setting some, throwing some numbers out there, just to give you a sense of how impactful diversity can be at a workplace. And some of these are, of course, focused on one aspect of diversity, which is the LGBTQ community. But there's some interesting stats that I've come across. So, for example, one of them is that US $5 trillion. That's the estimated global spending power of the LGBTQ community or LGBTQ consumers, right? I just want to let that number sink in there for a bit. $5 trillion. It's not million, it's not billion, it's $5 trillion, right? And I think if there are consumer companies out there, I hope all of you are listening, because really those are the kind of eye-popping numbers that we are talking about here. The second stat I want to sort of leave with all of you is the fact that if the sort of LGBT community were a country, they would probably be the world's fourth largest country by spending power, right? India's queer economy is estimated to be around, I think, $200 billion, which is nothing to sort of sniff at. Now, moving on to sort of diversity generically, I mean, all forms of diversity, not just in terms of the LGBTQ community. Deloitte Australia did an interesting sort of survey where they said that inclusive companies were 2 times more likely to meet or exceed their sort of financial targets or whatever targets that were set for them, and 3 times more likely to be higher performing than those companies that were not inclusive. They were 6 times more likely to be agile and innovative, and 8 times more likely to achieve better business outcomes. Now, with all of this information and data, it's clear that you don't need to make out a greater business case for DEI in corporate India or for corporates globally. Clearly, the business case has already been made. It is estimated that India's LGBTQ community itself, just that one section, is 6% of India's population, right? And then you add to other needs of other forms of people who fall within the DEI bracket, right? Whether it's gender or generation or religion or region or caste, what have you, right? So they say the more inclusive the workplace, the better it is from the perspective of the growth of the organization. So why is that? Because the general consensus is that diversity and inclusion together, which is basically diverse collaboration, it delivers more creative thinking and innovation necessary to survive in a highly uncertain and competitive market, right? So that's really the the crux of it. You have a more diverse workforce. They are the people who can help you survive, thrive, and navigate competitive markets, maybe in India, maybe globally, where have you. Non-diverse organizations tend to only be focused on a select few, and therefore the ability to think beyond, think larger, think out of the box generally tends to not happen. So I want to just pause here, and of course, I don't, I think the business case for DEI is clearly made, and I'll elaborate on some of these themes a little further in our discussion. But I want to sort of leave these points there for all of you to think about in terms of why DEI and why is it such a compelling business case today. It's not just the right thing to do, but it's also the financially smart thing to do or commercially smart thing to do.
Thank you so much, and that was really very informative to know about. So now we have been through that where myself has been there much more, but we, us, and our is the most inevitable vision which has to be inclusive at every step. So I would like Vandana ji to enlighten us with that. So over to you, Vandana.
What an amazing start, Anthony. The way you presented the business case, I think everybody over here now, you know, apart from the softer aspects of involving DNA, DNI in the system, in the ecology of every organization, understanding it from a business perspective is also very, very important. Now, coming to the question, we us and out the most inevitable vision to be inclusive at every step. We have been talking about building diversity, I think, when I started my journey as an employee. So that is more than 13 years ago. We started this wherein everybody started counting the number of people in their organization. Initially it was just limited to the men and to women ratio, and then diversity, more and more, uh, I think characters started getting added to the entire story of diversity. And today we have a like bouquet of how diverse we are as a population. And while we definitely have come a long way from where we started, what is more important is to understand that, just like what got us here will not take us further. Till now, we are just counting. However, the need of the hour is to stop counting and start including. Yeah, just having those policies in place which doesn't talk about genders, or has, creating those hiring plans and hiring policies which talks about diversity right from the entrance. Okay, and how do we ensure that is not enough. It's not enough, and clearly it is not enough, because any organization, when it comes to the culture of an organization, until and unless your people, your leaders start speaking the language that you want to, and the first step towards building that diversity is to create a communication plan. Today, the problem with a lot of organization is that they do a Google search of what other companies are doing, and that's it. I want to implement A, B, C, D because everybody else is doing, without even taking a pause to understand where exactly is the maturity of their particular organization. Every organization has a different maturity level, has a different culture, and culture, is like evolution. It takes time. And the best way to go forward with this is starting with communicating goal. You can begin with one simple goal, probably improving the office infrastructure to make it more inclusive, building more washrooms, which washrooms, or creating ramps, or creating a structure which allows everybody to speak in meetings. Small things like these, taking up one small agenda, like you just take office infrastructure, that's it, and start to work on it. Communicate this goal at the beginning to your leaders, to your people. Conduct sensitivity programs, again very important. It is like having a wedding party and inviting 2000 people and having food only for 500 people. Do you understand that scenario? We really don't want to be in that position. Most of the organizations today are in that position. They have invited people over for the party, but they don't have food for them. So, I think with that, the three important things is communicate. Start with creating a goal, communicate, go small steps, take one step at a time, ensure everybody is in sync with them, and then towards the end, also go back and give, with the data of what all we achieved. That's how we will be able to build inclusion. That's the vision to look forward to.
Thank you so much. Thanks for the wonderful sharing. So, start with small, but start something and be the change. That's what we should learn. So, now, how successful a DEE initiative is in Indian context. So, let's learn more about it from Sudipto ji. Over to you, Mr. Sudipto.
Yeah, thank you, Dhavan. I don't know whether I have a material where others can learn or not, but I can definitely share my viewpoints, thoughts, and perspective. If people find that it is something to take, there is a takeaway, they would obviously learn. And otherwise, I'm not saying that just because I'm sitting on the other side of the panel, whatever I say, there would be value on that also. Let me try my best. But I would like to first ask this, two questions to both Anthony and Vandana, because I think both of them raised two very, very important points, right? First, Anthony talked about it's a huge business case. My question is that if it is a huge business case, then it is not a nice to have thing, it's a need to have thing. So why is it that diversity and inclusion, what Vandana talked about, is that it's still not sunk in, it is not institutionalized, people are not really taking it forward? Isn't it powerful, point? Second point, what Vandana talked about, is that you invite 2,000 people and have food for 500. Why even does that happen? So let's go into the crux of the matter, I think. Okay. So if you talk about DEI, structurally, even though I or inclusiveness or inclusion comes at the end, but that's the foundation. If you are able to include, then I think you will have a diversity. And the equitable is a very, very important point, that inclusion and diversity does not mean that everybody will get the same share, right? It is about equitable share. It's a very much deeper question one has to understand. I'll go back to one step even further, particularly to Vandana, saying that Vandana talked about very practical steps in terms of some of those actions, but she also talked about culture. So through actions, if we talk about the tick box, culture does not necessarily come in. Culture comes from deep-rooted value, understanding, belief, and that actually gets translated into actions and behavior of people as a consistent, actions again and again, and not by one, but by all. That's how the culture happens. So for diversity, even for that matter, or the inclusion, the first fundamental aspect is basically diversity of thought. So if we have a set of people in organizations, in the community, in family, we have that value systems that where we are having the diversity of thoughts, and then automatically the inclusion will come in. If we are able to promote diversity, that is actually the real diversity. So the organizations, which Anthony also talked about, they promote diversity of thoughts. That's where that innovation, that's where the new inventions, collaborations, all those things would happen, the diversity of thought. And in that context, I must also tell you that probably DEI is, in my view, is a very, very Western concept. And this concept also came in from Western world. And all the reports that we read is also from either Australia or US or by Deloitte. But let us understand that our country is basically an epitome of DEI, because we talk about diversity and unity. No other country in the world has got that kind of a scenario where so many languages, so many religions, so many ethnicity, we all take it forward and together. So what I mean to say is this is something which is very much in our blood, in our gene. So we actually naturally do it. We may not have a RAM, but the problem is if there is someone who needs that help, I think we generally tend to take that person forward. So that's how I think I would say that in our context, in our country, even though from the tick box point of view, diversity has not been that successful, we need to really ponder about that. But otherwise, in terms of our society point of view, we already imbibed with the diversity and inclusion as a part of our culture. So it's the only question of, through some of those practical aspects which Vandana talked about, how do we take it forward in an organization?
Thank you so much. Thanks for your sharing. So, basically, being skillful and understanding your skills is much more important. And as Ian Anthony shared with us that empowering the skills is much more important. So what we believe is that empowering skills rather than an individual to create equitable work atmosphere is much more important in current situation. So let's know more about it from Anthony about it.
Sure, Dhawan. So before I get into empowering skills, I just wanted to take a minute to also add to what Shudipto said. You're absolutely right. We, as a country, I think, with more than maybe 5,000 years of history behind us, we could definitely teach a thing or two about diversity to sort of the world at large. So we have a deep understanding of diversity, probably very deep within us, within our DNAs, by virtue of our culture, our history, and what we have. Um, but today, the time has also come for us to sort of learn and absorb a little bit from those organizations or those countries that have done a little more work in that area and have put a little bit of structure to it. And I would like to take the same example that Sudipta mentioned about there not being a ramp, but that individual would still get ahead with the help of others. I think as a country, India has always been like that, right? We have always been there for an individual or individuals who need help. But today, I think we're reaching that place where the person in a wheelchair is now saying, I don't want to be helped. I want to get there on my own. I want to move ahead on my own. I appreciate that there's a community, there's a village, there's a country behind me that makes me happy, but I still want to go ahead on my own. And that is the point where we have reached today as a country, where now we need to start thinking about how we can invest more in making our workplaces more equitable. And I'm going to touch upon equity in a little bit, again, to add to what Sudipta said. I think the Supreme Court summed up equitable or equity very well when it said it means fairness. And fairness does not necessarily equate to equality. Equality is a different ballgame altogether. Fairness is what we have to aspire to as a country when we're talking about creating a more diverse and inclusive workplace. So anyway, so that was that bit. In terms of, sorry, Dhavan, I lost the second question that you asked while I was responding to Sudipta.
So it's rather than empowering an individual,
Skills.
the skills.
Yeah. So I have a slightly different take on that. I think one needs to definitely empower the individual with skills, and one needs to sort of give enough of a sort of skill-based training to individuals so that we can create a more equitable workplace. But that said, there's also tremendous opportunity for us to kind of do a lot more and create a. I think the key really here is to create a more sensitized workplace, a workplace where uh, the individuals kind of come together as a group, as a whole, in order to make a difference to how that workplace operates. I feel that individual skills training very important, yes, but what is significantly more important is to sensitize the world at large, or every workplace. Imagine if we had every company, every organization, every workplace that was sensitized with respect to all kinds of diversity, whether it's gender, generation, culture, persons with disability, the LGBTQ plus group. If there was sensitivity with respect to the fact that every individual is different, and it is that difference in every individual that makes them unique and a potentially great contributor to the workplace or to that particular organization. I would like to see a change where we are more focused on sort of sensitizing the group as a whole to take us forward, as opposed to not just focusing on individual skills. So that's my 2 cents on that.
That's great. Thank you so much. So, what we believe and what we should implement is that rather than working as an individual and respecting as an individual, respect the whole, respect in all. That's what we should do, and doing with that, a work-life balance is also much more important. So, work-life balance implementation will not only boost ourselves, but it will boost us ethically and emotionally towards our morals. So let's see what Vannaji has to say about that. Over to you, Vanna.
Well, for Sudipto, Anthony, again, amazing points. Very, very well put. My only point over here is this, that ever since the internet boom, I don't think there is a Western world and there is an Eastern world. I don't believe in that concept. We are all one now, one globe. I work with my partners who are across the globe all the time, and that's happening day in and day out. And slowly, with the changing norms, I think our ways and style of working has also changed. Our expectation from the organization has also changed, and hence come the concept of work life balance. Earlier, when I still remember, when and it's not that lame, very old thing. It's like in 2017, when the maternity policy was changed from 3 months to a 6 months thing by government of India. The kind of reaction that I got to hear from my managers was jaw dropping. Was jaw dropping. And all these people who have a family, who all come from a family, and who would really want the same similar treatment for their wives, but did not want to hire wives, or their own family, I would say. But then a lot of them, I'm not focusing on any specific gender. A lot of them were not in the mindset to hire. And when it came to hiring, again, those kind of questions, like, which year did you get married in during hiring? And what is your plan? And all other thing started coming up back, even though in 2017, these kind of personal questions were total no. But with the new maternity policy coming into picture, a lot of organization went back to what exactly, to covering their own place. Now, with COVID coming into picture, it gave another change in the entire ecosystem. Now what is happening? Now there is no household support, which, and you're managing work and life, or there is somebody who is struggling with COVID in your family. And hence comes in the concept of even more further balancing the work and life thing. For the longest time, we thought, there is a professional life and a personal life. In fact, we had different attires for both the lives. We had gone ahead in boxing everything. And slowly, the shirt came with the jeans. And slowly the casual dress code started coming to the workplace. And now, we are sitting in a sweatshirt and working, and that's fine. As the end of the day, what is important, it work getting happened. What I'm wearing has nothing to do with it. Now, why am I saying this? Is because slowly the boundaries are melting, the global boundaries, the work life boundaries. While it has definitely, from a posh perspective, if I look at it from, because I'm also a government of India resource person for posh, there have been a lot of scenarios wherein, because of these lines getting blurred, there have been a lot of unfortunate cases and scenarios and grievances which has come across. But it has also given a different perspective to people management. It is telling to celebrate your life beyond work. You are not just connected to, human robots who come to work without emotions. If everybody is at my home sick, how am I expected to work at 100%? I am not a robot. I am a human being. I am bound to get, I'm bound to get jumpy, irritated, because I might have not slept well. As a supervisor, as a manager, that's how, again, this is another kind of diversity which has come into picture. And that's what is inclusion all about. And that's where equity come into picture. You can't go ahead and give the same treatment to the person who has almost everybody admitted in the hospital, and you're expecting him to or her to work at 100%, 120%, or similar to way they were functioning. No, that's going to happen. Not going to happen. It is important, more and more important, to focus on those one-on-one engagement with your team members. Again, because a lot of us are not very vocal about their personal life. In India, there is a scenario wherein, if the moment an employee does a mistake, the manager will somehow have the time to have that conversation. The moment this thing happens, the first conversation, in heart to heart conversation that you're happening one on one, that is happening between you and the employee, is nothing but actually ensuring performance management standards. And that discussion has bound to have negative impact on that person. And maybe you don't even know this person now that well. As a result, what will happen? The employee might leave and go. But however, in case you had this one on one interaction, you had spent that time to understand your employee, what will happen? It will develop an emotional connect with you and the employee. And that's when the required feedback sharing will happen, wherein the person will be perceptive to your feedback, because they don't, just think you as a person manager. They think you as somebody who is also a mentor, who has real interest in their productivity, and we are mutually meeting each other's goal. So, when it comes to work life balance, it is again important to change our ways in which we are working, ensure that we are connecting with our people on a regular basis, and not just the supervisor to manager, supervisor to employee, but I would say it should be vice versa as well. There are times, we say, why is my manager so irritated all the time? That manager might have, so many things to manage at his or her home, at their home. Very important to understand that perspective also. So with work from home or work life balance coming requirement which is there, again I'm saying, in order to ensure the work life balance, in order to ensure that you are really connected to your own employees, and in order to boost that ethical and emotional connect with your employee, please go ahead and engage with them honestly. And just don't do performance management. You have humans to treat, don't treat them as robots.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your wonderful sharing. So now coming back to Sudipto, currently the situation of post-pandemic growth has become a question. It is most questionable thing. So should it be involved with diversity through equitable opportunity?
I think you talked about two things. One is the diversity, another is the equitable opportunity related to growth. Can you just clarify a little bit more? Exactly what do you mean by that?
So nowadays, what we believe is that diversity has been there, but people are still workplace. People are not, employees are not opening up to talk about what actually they are feeling, or what, whether they are satisfied with their work or not. But they are not actually opening up what they are feeling, because there are some places or organizations where equitability is a question.
No, you just question, you said growth. So how is growth related to that? I mean, just a little clarification on that.
Yes, so basically, right now, post pandemic, the growth has become a question, right? There are situations where sometimes growth has stopped or growth has reduced due to
Become
the.
limited, right, right.
Yes. So, because of that, there is diversity has involved in many places, but many a times equal opportunity is not being given to all the associates.
Okay, so yeah, so if I understood your question correctly, you are saying that whether to promote diversity, a particular section of people are given advantages in
Yes,
growth.
exactly.
Is
Exactly.
that what you are saying?
Yes.
Okay, so I think, as I said, that if people have not understood, the essence of inclusion and diversity, which is on the bedrock of equity, then these kind of problems should come, and which is nothing to do with only pandemic, by the way, right? Even before pandemic, in any organization, growth is limited. Number one, opportunities are limited, and the organizations, the way they have tried to comply with this thing is more like a tick box, that okay, in my organization, or in my team, or in that particular leadership team, we need to have 50% of either this religion, this gender, so and so forth. It doesn't work like that. We have to first understand that the sustainability of that is only when there is a capable person in the right position, right? So that is the fundamental. Then the question is that how do I promote that capability within the organization to ensure that I am not only giving the equal opportunity, but at the same time I am able to sustain that with a long-term perspective. So whether pandemic or not, of course, pandemic has accentuated this problem with a limited growth probably. I think we have to be very conscious of the mind that how do we take diversity initiative, right? Because otherwise it will become more like another reservation where people will have a lot of aversion to this concept, and that's why it will have it will be counterproductive. So we need to ensure that we need to create a little long-term plan and strategy. And then you see everything being equal, we need to really embrace this diversity the way we see it in our society as well, right? Well, there would be some certain differences in the different cultures. For example, through communications, we are getting more used to with breaking the barriers, and the pandemic itself has actually gave us a particular example that virus doesn't wait for boundaries, whether it is eastern wall or western wall. But there is a difference in communication, and one has to understand that, and we need to completely see what is good about that we need to take it forward. So obviously, I think if you have that long-term strategy, and that's where I think your skill building, capability building, that becomes much more important. And you should do it irrespective of whether it is, this gender or this religion. And if you do that, automatically you find that the way the society is, you will be able to put the right people in the right place, and it will be diverse. However, important point also that there is certain natural advantages or disadvantages, and that's why probably you will find that at a very, very senior level, probably women members are less, and that's why equity comes into place, saying that how do you create equal platform for them, considering the fact that they have their natural, women have women have the natural tendency to give birth and nurture children little more than the male folks. Just an example. And that's why I think supporting each other to make it much more equitable becomes important, not only in organization, also at home. And that's why you call it, you prefer the word that not the work-life balance, but work-life integration. If I behave in a very different manner at home, I can't behave very differently in an organization. So only when there is an integration, and that's where the cultural integration will also happen. And that's how I think we'll be moving towards the right direction. One last point I'd also like to say that though Vandana talked about there is both the worlds are same, but culturally, geographically, and otherwise, there are certain different behaviors, right? For example, the Western world, they are very much believe in contracting. So that aspect of respecting people, that if somebody has fallen sick, the examples Vandana talked about, in Indian countries, they will be probably much more human and say, okay, you have a problem. Okay, don't worry. We'll take care of this thing. You go at home. In Western culture, probably they would say, no, your contract says you have to deliver so much. So you do whatever, right? At the end of the day. So differences will be there. So we have to adopt what is best suited for us. And, and that's how we need to have a complete integration, not only in the work life, in the world as well. And obviously your question about growth opportunity, diversity as a mandate should not come on the way, then it will not be sustainable.
Great. Thank you so much. So basically, it is different culture has different
Levels.
different opportunities, different effects are there, different pros and cons are there. So it's better to speak out thoroughly, to express about what you feel. So now, like Anthony, to shares his views on that.
Sure, Dhawan. So, before I sort of get into, the whole, into speaking up and expressing oneself, I think it's very, very, very important. But we also need to understand the context of every individual, where they come from, what shapes them or what defines them. So, I want to talk a little bit about a concept called intersectionality, which most of you may be familiar with. But for those who aren't, very simply put, intersectionality recognizes that different people have multiple layers in their identity, right? Sometimes those multiple layers is what makes them who they are. Sometimes you tend to slot people into different buckets. Let's say gender, for example. Women tend to get slotted into the gender bucket. But it doesn't take into account that an educated, privileged woman has a very different sort of experience than one who is uneducated, illiterate, maybe poorer, from a lower strata of society, etc. Right? You can add the layers on as you go. Therefore, the more points of intersectionality one has, the harder it may be to speak up about their experiences, right? The ability to speak up for oneself, to express, therefore becomes critical, but also that much more difficult and that much more challenging. I know from where I stand, I can find it much, much easier to speak up and express myself than somebody else who may not have the same shared experiences as I do. So, and that's really why the whole the E in DEI becomes so critical, right? That equitable treatment, fairness to all, that is really the best way to ensure that people who are feeling, who may have had multiple points of intersectionality in their life, feel the confidence or feel comfortable enough to speak up about their experiences. So, so I just want to spend a couple of seconds more on the equality versus equity debate. So one of my favorite examples is of a person in a wheelchair, right? An equal treatment for that individual would be to say that equal treatment for all in this company, and everybody can apply for a job, and those who get it will sort of come in and can start working, etc. Of course, it's very different for a person in a wheelchair because they will struggle to get inside the office. They will struggle to get to their desk or their place or their chair or what have you, right? But if you're an organization that's focused on equality, that's where a person on a wheelchair is likely to struggle. But if you're an organization focused on equitable and fair treatment, you would have a ramp in your organization. You'd make sure that the aisles are such that it is sufficiently wide enough for a wheelchair to pass through. You'd give thought to every aspect of how the office is. Another example could be an individual who is visually impaired or even blind, for that matter, right? Equality means that they'll get a job, they'll get a desk, and they'll get a laptop like everybody else, and then they have to find their way. But the equitable way of or the fairness that comes into the picture is to ensure that that individual has the right software in order to be able to do their work, and that and also more importantly, the entire organization has to be sensitized to the fact that there are people who are different in the organization, and that's what makes the organization as a whole. And those different individuals may not always be able to speak up. But if you sensitize the entire organization, if you train them, sensitize them, reinforce, equity as a buzzword in the organization, you will find that it is they all who become allies. And once they become allies, they are the people who will be, sort of helping those, who need to speak up, giving them the sort of courage to speak up, even though it may not be in very, very obvious ways. So creating the right environment in an organization, in my view, is really absolutely critical. And that is what is going to lead to a place where people can speak up, people can express their views freely. They can come out if they need to, right? So you take your pick, but it'll always boil down to the culture of the organization. And the culture of the organization, if it is one that has fully sensitized the workforce, and it is one that is a diverse and inclusive organization, then you'll find that nobody has any difficulty speaking up or expressing themselves.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So be expressive and say what you have to say. So coming back to Sudipto, what we believe is that win or lose is like two sides of a coin. And is it fair enough, or say rather, is it good? Should we encourage or discourage the comparison?
No, of course, I think we should not encourage, right, in a comparison. And I can take the cue. It's very well said, Anthony. I think the whole aspect of equitable would be the basis to respond to your question now, Dhavan, right? I mean, uh, different people come from the different background, different perspective, and that's so that creating that equal platform is very, very important, right? And that, that's there. So the moment we are coming from that concept that, you know, to be equitable, then being fair, obviously the comparison is the basic destruction towards this, you know, fundamental concept. So obviously we should not get into that aspect of comparison in this context. Of course, I mean, the whole world is basically relative. Obviously, there would be, even given the same platform, somebody might do little better, somebody would do little less, and that comparison will always come in a healthy manner to say that, okay, where is the opportunity for someone to do better, right? But these comparisons should not be in a manner which is harmful, and especially in the case where the equitable or equal platform was not given in the context. So understanding the context before even getting into the comparison is basically very wrong. And that's why I think Vandana's point is also very valid, that how in an organization we should be able to understand people in a better, deeper way, in an engaged way. Once you do that, and in that case, I think we should be able to understand the context of the individual. Then we would know that is it a comparison where it will be healthier for the organization and for the individual, or is it going to be actually a destruction?
Right, that's great. Thank you. So it's great to have a healthy competition. So it will be good for each and everyone. So there is a very famous saying that don't judge a book by its cover. Right. So how diversely we should implement? I would like to know more about it from Mannaji.
How diversely we should implement is the first question that any HR professional should ask themselves. When we ask this question to ourselves, the first thing that supposed to do is look at the current scenario. I keep telling, look at the current position. Your current scenario is the best guide to where exactly you should go next.
Hmm.
Of
Yeah,
course,
yeah.
if you don't know your destination station, you can't really get a ticket. And in order to go reach that destination ticket, you need to have a plan. And when it comes to diversity, one thing that again very very important, and is very pertinent, in order to ensure that your whatever your strategies that you're planning, whatever your data is saying to you, accordingly you plan a strategy and you implement. But also remember to audit, do a RACI of where exactly you fell short, and only then will you progress every year. It cannot be achieved in 1 year. Let's take it. Both Sudipto and Anthony, they've actually spoken tons about you know how important it is to let go of equality and accept equity. And I will speak a very small example, which usually happens. Whenever there is any event, we say, get t-shirts for everybody. Get t-shirts for everybody. And a maximum that we do is, okay, fine, collect everybody's sizes. But what about those people who don't wear who don't wear t-shirts, who don't like to wear t-shirts? Their culture doesn't allow them to wear t-shirt. They are not comfortable in a t-shirt. Ask this question to yourself. Just don't implement anything blanket. There is a scope, when it comes to a wheelchair, of course, from an infrastructure point of view, I know there is a huge cost involved. But now the cost that you have involved, okay, for buying t-shirt, get a kurta for someone who likes kurta. What is wrong in that? You have to come up with such ideas which ensures that you are pro equity. and only then you will have a diverse population, which and make sure that they are all included in it. So remember to tie that bow on your bouquet. Important.
Thank you so much. Thank you for so wonderful sharing. And I just want to share one thing which I believe that life cycle is a journey. Learn it before you judge it. And now I would like to hand over it back to Peterson.
Thank you, Dhawan. Before we move on to the Q&A session, um, we'll be initiating a poll. Would request all our participants to kindly share their feedback on our today's session. And while you all are doing so, request you all to kindly share your questions pertaining to our today's topic in the chat box. We would be happy to have them addressed by our panel members. So over to you, Dhawan. We have few questions that have been shared in the chat box.
Yes, thank you. So, we have a question that what are the key benefits of diverse workforce and what are the key challenges organization may face with high amount of diversity in the organization? So, I would like the panel members if they can share their view over this.
So if I've understood the question correctly, what are the benefits of having a diverse workforce versus the challenges of
Yes,
an organization that may have a high amount of diversity?
that's correct.
So obviously, I think I'll take the first crack at this. It's clear that the key benefit of having a diverse workforce, to my mind, is the multiplicity of inputs that people, decision makers, management can get, right. When you don't have a diverse workforce, all you get are inputs that are from people who are like you or like-minded, right? So you as a leader fail to get a sufficient inputs which can actually which can actually help the organization. So I'm approaching this purely from a growth perspective, although there are many perspectives that one can answer this question from. But so therefore, what are the challenges that an organization might face with a high amount of diversity? Well, there could be a few. It depends on how you look at it. But I would say that when you have greater diversity, that means you as a leader need to operate from a position of consensus building. If you are the kind of leader who likes to kind of take a decision and then just sort of steamroll it through the organization, that may not, this is from my experience, that may not necessarily work well in a diverse organization where you have multiple views, multiple thoughts, plurality of ideas and opinions. So a diverse workforce will work well where a leader is ready to sort of take the entire workforce along with them when they are sort of in the process of decision making. So those are the first thoughts that came to mind. Shudipto and Vandana do chip in.
I think, Anthony, you have answered it very well. And I want to tell you that, and you have actually answered it in all completeness. And adding just one point to that would be that, challenges, when it comes to challenges, anything that you implement new is going to be a challenge. The challenge of acceptance that inherently comes because of the culture that we get, that Sudipto also explained, that, the freedom of thought that you have, it takes time. You will not reach there in one sensitivity training. No, neither will your employees. So again, I say it's a journey that you will have to make. It is an uncharted sea route, I would say, which might lead to a lot of arguments. There can be a heated discussion, which we see in the country also today. But that doesn't mean we stop doing it, because the pros are much, much bigger.
Right, right.
Yeah.
That's great. So we have one more question, that is that how should an HR leader ensure that diverse teams join hands together and work for organizations common vision, mission and objectives?
Okay, so maybe I just take this one. I have a great example. Why do you think that Indian Army, for example, they are willing to give their lives? They come from a diverse background, right? They come from different parts of India, different religion, different socioeconomic background. But when they are fighting for their country, they are all willing to, give their life for the country. So I think what is very important is the purpose. If the purpose is very clear, then one can even give their life for the purpose as well. So that's why, interestingly, forget about just working with a common vision, mission, or objectives. Even attracting people, joining organization. There was a study done across the world in terms of what's the Gen Z they are willing to, in terms of their priority for the organizations to join. The main thing that came up, I did this study globally in the MNC I was working before, about 3 years ago, and it came out that is the purpose of the organizations. Gone are those days when they say it is my benefits or is it the salary. That would still be important, but not on the top of the list. Gen Z has evolved much, and today's generation is looking for the purpose. So I think that is the most important part of HR in the leadership. I don't say HR is different. HR is a part of the leadership to create the purpose for the organization and go for that. Once that is done, I think the whole organization, everybody will rally around that.
Right. Thank you. So another question here we have is that what are the basic components of healthy competition?
The basic components of a healthy competition is that one statement which says we all can agree or we can agree to disagree, and we still won't kill each other.
That's great. That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. And one last question we have from the audience is that how do I know the level of inclusiveness employees feel within the organization, and how do I identify the roadblockers and the areas of improvement to increase the sense of inclusiveness in the employees?
I'll take a crack at this one. I think, there are many ways to approach something like this. How does a leader really get a pulse check of, what the organization is thinking or what its people are thinking? Sometimes very simple things like very simple solutions can sort of be the answer, right? For example, think of conducting poll within your people, within your employees. Very simple poll that asks them, do you feel included? Do you feel the culture of the organization is right? Do you feel, safe, etc.? Whatever the questions that you want to ask. And those are the kind of that poll, and it might be that you need to conduct the poll anonymously in order to get real feedback. But even if 1% or 2% or 5% of your organization feels that they don't feel that level of inclusiveness, it's something for you to work on. As a leader, you take that feedback and say, okay, fine. I know it's a small percentage of people, but the fact that there's still some percentage that feels not included, it's my job as a leader to address that segment. So work towards it. Take the feedback, figure out whether it is. So how do I identify the roadblockers, right, and areas of improvement? Use the poll, use the feedback, and that's one aspect. The other is also amongst your leadership team and the levels below them. start having smaller water cooler conversations, right? Having conversations with individuals and let them cascade it down. Let them push it down to their teams. Between the two, you're going to get a lot of data. Use that data, parse it, understand, how to sort of break down the data to really understand what are the next steps or action items for you to do. And then take steps to rectify it. It may be sensitization, it may be activities throughout the year, it may be taking any kind of specific steps that you get as feedback, and then run the poll again 6 months down the line, run the poll again 12 months down the line. And you do this frequently enough, you're going to start seeing a change in your organization. That's definitely guaranteed, because the minute the employees in an organization feel that the leadership is listening to what they are saying, they will be more forthcoming, not just in anonymous surveys. They'll be forthcoming enough to maybe even drop you, the leader, an email directly saying, look, these are some of the issues that I've identified and that you should look into. Also have an open door policy. Be known as a leader who's approachable, be known as a leader who's willing to take feedback, who's willing to take corrective steps to fix the direction of the ship, so to speak. I think all of these will get any leader to the place that they should be or that they want to be.
Okay,
Just one
if I
point
can
that I want to
add.
Please.
Okay, so I just in just a couple of points, I'd like to add. I firmly believe that in an organization, particularly in HR, whatever you do, it has got very close connection with the families. Examples of families. So if I talk about let's say a large joint family, and grandmother or grandfather would not require tools to understand, let's say, the talent of the grandchildren, or maybe how people are feeling, etc. Because there is a genuine connect as a family member, and grandmother is actually concerned about the family and the children and the grandchildren, so would know what's happening, right? So I feel the same thing even in the organization. Of course, what Anthony talked about, is a very, very right thing when you talk about managing the scale, because family size is different versus the organizational size. We need to have a tool of, in terms of polls, etc., etc. But in a smaller group with the managers and all, if you can just break it down, and if everybody is very keen to know about the employees, they can do that. That is possible with a genuine interest. That's number one. And second thing is that if you do so, first of all, if you start getting so many criticism of you or about the organization, I think that is the first positive and good step, that you have created an inclusive environment. Because only when people feel that they are included, they should be open to criticize, to give feedback, to talk about improvements, because they are somehow still feel included and attached with the organizations. And automatically the roadblockers will also come from them, and it will be easier for organization or the leader to implement them if you are genuinely interested towards doing so.
One small point to be added was by me is, to this is become observant as a leader. Your observation will take you long way. Believe me, everything is happening right in front of you. I don't know why we complicate it so much. Create a council of people who will be your inclusivity council, who will be, being a part of, they are your silent observers during the meetings, during parties, during normal working on the floor. Who is asking you to sit in your cabin and work? Walk out of your cabin, go to a workplace floor, sit on a couch and work together with your people. That's how you get to know your people. There is no, rocket science in knowing your people and understanding where you stand. Just by observation, you can reach there.
Great. Thank you. Over to you, Peterson.
Thank you, Dhawan. Thank you so much for taking us through this insightful session. Thank you, Mr. Sudipto, Ms. Vandana, and Mr. Anthony for sharing your insights and learning with all of us. To all those who wish to learn and grow, you can access the recordings of our today's session on our YouTube link shared in the chat window. Before we conclude with our today's session, we would also want to thank all the association members, Geisha, NASCOM COE, Talgro, TLE, WICCI, LinkedIn Local Ahmedabad, and India for supporting HRAI event. To know more about these associations, request you to kindly follow the link provided in the chat window. Do join us for our next event, a masterclass series on leading people in current times. The first session is by Mr. Ramakrishna Rao, Head of Learning and Development, Page Industries Limited, starting from the 21st of Feb 2022 at 3 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Request you to kindly register for this event at the link mentioned in the chat window. Also to join the dialogue WhatsApp chat group through the invite link shared in the chat window. See you soon. Stay safe, take care, and bye for now. Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Faisal. We can hereby conclude with our today's session.